Welcome to part 3 of the Recapture Your Health with Delicious Plant Foods video series. I'm registered dietitian Dominic Morrow, and I hope the first 2 parts of the series have convinced you to consider adopting a whole food plant-based diet as a means to recapturing your health. Part 3 addresses registered dietitian Jeff Novick's calorie density approach to whole food plant-based diets. We here at Plantastic Life believe that Novick's approach is the likeliest and healthiest way to achieve lifelong weight and health management. When you master this approach, you can be sure that you will be eating a very nutrient-dense diet. And if you need to lose weight, you will. You'll reach the weight that is right for you. The goal is that this approach will become second nature to you, and before you know it, you'll be eating an amazingly healthy diet with very little effort. Before getting into the nitty-gritty of calorie density, here are 2 very important disclaimers. The information provided is designed for educational purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for informed medical advice or care. You should not use this information to diagnose or treat any health problems or illnesses without consulting your family doctor. Please consult a doctor with any questions or concerns you might have. And dietary change is powerful medicine. If you are currently under a physician's care and/or on prescription medications, notify your physician on your plans to follow a whole food plant-based diet. Very often, certain prescription medications can be reduced or even eliminated. This is particularly important if you are on blood pressure and diabetes medications. Taking a calorie density approach can make a whole food plant-based diet especially powerful. Why is this approach so great? It's the simplest approach to lifelong weight management. It allows you to eat more food and fewer calories, not a bad deal, and it increases the nutrient density of your diet. So what the heck is calorie density? Calorie density is simply a measure of how many calories are in a given weight of food, and it's most often expressed as calories per pound. Foods high in calorie density have a large number of calories in a small weight of food, whereas foods low in calorie density have much fewer calories in the same weight of food. Therefore, one can consume a larger portion of low-calorie dense food than a high-calorie dense food for the same number of calories. On a day-to-day basis, people generally eat a similar amount of food by weight. Therefore, consuming more low-calorie dense foods allows us to consume our usual amount of food, or more, while reducing our caloric intake. Foods low in calorie density also tend to be higher in satiety. Satiety means that they are appetite satisfying. So by consuming foods lower in calorie density, one can fill up on much fewer calories without having to go hungry and without having to weigh and measure or portion control our food. In addition, the foods that are lower in calorie density, fruits, veggies, starchy veggies, intact whole grains, and legumes, are also the foods highest in nutrient density. So by following a whole food plant-based diet, lower in calorie density, one also automatically consumes a diet higher in nutrient density. Jeff Novick's principles of calorie density include hunger and satiety. Whenever hungry, eat until you are comfortably full. Don't starve and don't stuff yourself. Sequence your meals. Start all meals with a salad, soup, and/or fruit. And don't drink your calories. Chew your calories. Don't drink or liquefy them. Liquids have little, if any, satiety, so they do not fill you up as much as solid foods of equal calories. Dilution is the solution. Dilute the calorie density of your meals by filling half your plate with intact whole grains, starchy vegetables, and/or legumes, and the other half with vegetables and/or fruit. Be aware of the impact of vegetables versus fat and oil. Vegetables are the lowest in calorie density, while fat and oil are the highest. Therefore, adding vegetables to any dish will always lower the overall calorie density of a meal, while adding fat and oil will always raise the overall calorie density of a meal. Limit high-calorie dense foods. So limit or avoid whole plant foods that are higher in calorie density, such as nuts, seeds, avocados, olives, dried fruit, and whole grain flours. If you use them, incorporate them into meals that are made up of low-calorie dense foods and think of them as a condiment to the meal. For example, add a few slices of avocado to a large salad, or add a few walnuts or raisins to a bowl of oatmeal and fruit. The calorie density scale helps to show why whole plant foods are such nutrition bargains. Non-starchy vegetables contain anywhere from 60 to 195 calories per pound. Fruits anywhere from 140 to 420 calories per pound. Research has shown that people can eat freely of foods that are 300 calories per pound or less and not gain weight. Most of us do not have to worry about overeating fruits and vegetables. Whole plant foods that contain 300 to 800 calories per pound can be eaten quite liberally. It's possible for someone to lose or maintain weight while eating fairly generous amounts of these foods on a daily basis. People are often surprised that they can eat liberal amounts of potatoes, sweet potatoes, beans, peas, lentils, and whole grain, rice, pastas, and hot cereals. These foods are not only low to moderate in calorie density, but most are high in satiety, meaning that they satisfy the appetite. Unfortunately, most Americans smother these foods in fatty cheeses and meats, or butter, margarine, and oils, turning the meal into a high-calorie dense monstrosity. As we look at the next section of the calorie density scale, we can see the whole plant foods that are higher in calorie density. The intake of foods with calorie density of 800 to 1800 calories per pound should be limited, as these can contribute to weight gain and interfere with efforts to lose weight. Additionally, the intake of foods over 1800 calories per pound should be extremely limited, as these foods can very easily contribute to weight gain and obesity and can also greatly interfere with efforts to lose weight. Whole grain breads, bagels, fat-free muffins, dried fruit have calorie densities anywhere from between 920 to 1360 calories per pound. Although these items are usually low in fat, their calorie density is moderate to moderately high due to loss of water weight. Pure sugar contains 1800 calories per pound. Sugar comes in various forms, and the calorie density may be slightly lower in some based on the amount of water it contains. Honey, molasses, agave, corn syrup, maple syrup, evaporated cane juice, and brown rice syrup are all sugars and are high-calorie dense foods and should be limited in your diet. The foods very high in calorie density are in red. Notice that oils are the most calorically dense foods that you can eat. Oils are 4,000 calories per pound. All oil is pure fat. Oil extracted from any plant contains 4,000 calories per pound, and that includes oil from olives, coconuts, soybeans, rapeseed, safflowers, sunflowers, flax seeds, or any other plant we strip of its fat. Each of these extracted oils will have their unique fatty acid profiles, some of which are often advertised to contain health-promoting properties. The fact is, all oil is junk food. We call a food junk if it contains lots of calories and little nutrition. Nothing is junkier than oil. Although nuts, nut butters, and seeds, along with olives and avocados, contain large amounts of fat, you're better off eating these in limited amounts rather than extracted oils, as you will be consuming health-promoting phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals, fiber, and even protein with your calories. Please don't think that margarine and butter are any better than vegetable oils. All of the calories from butter and margarine come from fat. The only reason that butter and margarine are not 4,000 calories per pound, but 3,200 calories per pound, is because each contains water weight to lower the calorie density a little bit. Butter is high in saturated fat, and many margarines contain trans fats, and both of these fats hate your arteries. The 2007 report from the American Cancer Institute and the World Cancer Research Fund recommended lowering the average calorie density of the American diet to 567 calories per pound. One can easily do this by following the principles of calorie density, which allows us to eat freely of unrefined, unprocessed fruits, veggies, starchy veggies, intact whole grains, legumes, without the addition of salt, sugar, and/or fat and oil. To summarize, calorie density really is a common sense approach to sound nutrition and is the cornerstone of good health. It is the simplest way to lose and/or manage your weight for life. By following a few simple principles, you will increase the amount of food on your plate while decreasing your overall caloric intake, all without ever having to go hungry. At the same time, you will be optimizing your overall nutrient intake. Although calorie density is important, the total amount of your calories that come from fat is also important in protecting your overall health by protecting your arteries from damage. So how many of our calories should be made up of fat? Believe it or not, your daily requirement for fat is only around 3 to 5% of your total calories. And this requirement only includes 2 essential fatty acids that are best provided by plant foods. For more information on essential fatty acids, check out the frequent discussion topics on the Plantastic Life website. In America, the average fat intake is 33% of our total calories. This is way too much. Recommended ranges depend upon which camp you are in. If you're in the low-fat camp, you should consume around 10% of your calories as fat. Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. John McDougall, and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn Jr. are in this camp. The high-fat camp allows you to eat up to 30% of your calories as fat. This camp includes the American Heart Association, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, and the United States Department of Agriculture. Jeff Novick splits the difference between the camps, and it recommends getting less than or equal to 20% of calories as fat. And we at Plantastic Life agree with Jeff that 20% or lower is a reasonable level for which to shoot. It is difficult to meet this requirement on a regular basis if your diet includes even moderate levels of meat, fish, poultry, and dairy. In fact, it's difficult to stay under the 30% guideline supported by the high-fat campers. The next few slides will help you see this. Starting with popular cheeses, you can see that regular American cheese and whole milk mozzarella are not only high in calorie density, but 76% and 67% of their calories come from fat respectively. You can save some calorie density by eating reduced fat American cheese and part skim mozzarella, but each still contain over half their calories as fat. You'll notice that fat-free American cheese reduces calorie density quite a bit, and the percentage of calories as fat is at a minuscule 5%. Just be aware that by reducing the fat in the cheese, you'll be eating a higher percentage of dairy protein, which, as T. Colin Campbell wrote about in the China study, appears not to be such a good thing. I've also been told that fat-free American cheese doesn't melt very well when cooked and tastes less like cheese than the wrapper it comes in. Ricotta cheeses and cottage cheeses are lower in calorie density because of their water weight. But as you can see, only low-fat cottage cheese falls under our 20% guideline for percentage of calories that come from fat. And 90% of cream cheese calories are fat calories. You can cut the calorie density quite a bit by choosing low-fat cream cheese, but a hefty 68% of its calories are fat calories. Are you beginning to see that low-fat and reduced-fat dairy products are not anything close to being low-fat foods? The low-fat version of Swiss cheese provides 27% of its calories as fat, certainly better than 68%, but it's still above our 20% guideline. Low-fat cheddar at 36% calories as fat is also well above our 20% guideline. Processed meats are not much better than cheeses. In some cases, they are far worse. In addition to their strong association with colon cancer risk, processed meats are high in calorie density and loaded with fat calories. Processed meats like pepperoni, salami, and bologna are very unhealthy choices. The leanest processed meats that you can typically find in the supermarket are lean boiled ham and turkey breast. Even turkey breast is over our 20% guideline. Now, if you follow a low-fat, whole food, plant-based diet 90 to 95% of the time, the occasional food that contains a high percentage of calories as fat will not move your average up very much. but I'd rather you include high-fat plant foods such as nuts, nut butters, seeds, and avocados than processed meats and cheeses. What about ground meats? They're marketed as being low in fat. Well, as you can see from the chart, information on the label can be very misleading. When meat and dairy list fat percentage on their labels, the percentage amount pertains to the amount of fat by weight that the product contains. So although 85% fat-free ground beef and ground turkey only contain 15% of fat by weight, that small amount of fat provides 59% and 56% of total calories respectively. This makes sense, as fat is the most calorically dense food we can eat. A calorically dense food provides lots of calories in a small amount of food. 95% fat-free ground beef provides 34% of its calories as fat, again well above our 20% guideline. The only ground meat that meets our guideline is 99% fat-free ground turkey. Here is a quick glimpse of how cow's milk fares. Whole milk is 3.1% milk fat by weight, but almost half of its calories come from fat. 2% milk provides 35% of its calories as fat, so it can hardly be called a low-fat food. And 1% milk barely makes our 20% or less guideline. As of the year 2015, loopholes in the U.S. labeling laws make it pretty easy for food manufacturers to mislead consumers. So here is a piece of advice when reading food labels. The most important rule is to never believe anything on the front of a food label, ever. Food manufacturers are good at using the front of the food label to make unhealthy foods appear healthy. On the next slide is a food that may or may not be a healthy snack choice. If you look at the front of the label, it appears to be a smart choice. These are Heinz all-natural baked crackers. They are all natural, baked with organic whole wheat flour. They contain no trans fat and no artificial flavors. They sound pretty good. We'll revisit these a bit later, but first I want to talk about important aspects of the nutrition facts label. There's a lot of information on the nutrition facts label, much of which I consider to be confusing and useless. However, dietary fiber information and sodium amounts per serving are helpful. But because this video is focused on calorie density and percentage of calories coming from fat, we're going to concentrate on the information that will help you to make decisions pertaining to these concerns. You can make good choices by focusing on the following 3 bits of information: serving size, calories, and calories from fat. The serving size on the food package influences the number of calories and all nutrient amounts listed on the top part of the label. When comparing serving sizes between items, always compare serving size by weight. 1 cup of one item may weigh more or less than another item. You want to make sure that you are comparing similar weights. Serving size by weight should always be the first information you look at. You can't be sure that you're making a fair comparison if you don't take serving size into account. Here is a comparison of the nutrition facts labels of 2 types of chips. So we want to compare the serving size by weight of both items in order for us to determine which is lower in calorie density and which contains a higher percentage of calories as fat. This comparison happens to be very straightforward, as the serving sizes of each are the same by weight, 1 ounce or 28 grams. Example A provides 120 calories per ounce and example B provides 150 calories per ounce. So it's easy to see that example A is lower in calorie density than example B. To determine the percentage of calories as fat, divide the calories from fat into the calories per serving and multiply by 100. When we do this, we see that 25% of example A's calories come from fat and 47% of example B's calories come from fat. So with everything else being equal, example A would be the better choice. Example A happens to be Baked Ruffles Original Potato Chips, and example B is Doritos Cool Ranch Chips. Although Baked Ruffles is the better choice, it is by no means a food that is low in calorie density. Its calorie density is 1920 calories per pound. That is a higher calorie density than pure sugar. And 25% of its calories as fat is above our 20% guideline. Even though the chips are baked, the relatively small amount of oil that is added raises the calorie density and fat content dramatically. It's not the potato that is high in calorie density, it's the oil. These next two examples are dry cereals. Disregard the column that includes skim milk, as we only want to compare the calorie densities and fat calorie percentage of the cereals. Compare the serving size by weight of the two products. Both serving sizes are 27 grams, even though the volume amounts differ slightly. Example D is denser than example C, so only 3/4 of a cup of example D weighs 27 grams, whereas it takes 1 cup of example C to give us 27 grams. We can quickly see that both of these cereals are low in dietary fat. Example C gets 0% of its calories from fat, while example D gets 9% of its calories from fat. Both are well under our 20% guideline. We can also see that example C is slightly lower in calorie density, as it provides 100 calories in 27 grams compared to example D's 110 calories in 27 grams. Example C is Rice Chex, and example B is Magically Delicious Lucky Charms. The calorie density of Lucky Charms is 1,825 calories a pound. The calorie density of Rice Chex is 1,659 calories per pound. So even though Rice Chex is the better choice and does not contain added sugar, its calorie density could never be considered low, as it is only 141 calories per pound lower than that of pure sugar. Let's compare Rice Chex to another cereal. With this product, you can see that there is no column that adds skim milk. That's because this is not typically meant to be eaten as a cold cereal. This is oatmeal, and most of us cook oatmeal in water and eat it hot. The serving size listed is by dry weight, and it's 40 grams. It's more than the 27 grams listed on the Rice Chex label. 40 grams of dry oatmeal has a calorie density of 1,680 calories per pound, a little bit more than Rice Chex. There's a simple mathematical formula you can use to determine calories per pound that I will show you a little bit later in this presentation. So it appears that oatmeal and Rice Chex are just about tied, but there's much more here than meets the eye. Not only do you have to consider serving size by weight, but more importantly, you must consider the weight of the serving after preparation. 40 grams of dry oatmeal makes approximately 182 grams of cooked oatmeal. So you will get 150 calories in 182 grams of oatmeal, or 182 grams of food, not 40 grams of food. The calorie density of cooked oatmeal is approximately 370 calories per pound, almost 4.5 times less than the calorie density of Rice Chex and almost 5 times less than that of Lucky Charms. And that's not including the calories you'll be eating from the milk when you eat the cold cereals. Hot cereals like oatmeal are a wonderful choice for people who would benefit from weight loss. You can eat so much more oatmeal for such fewer calories when compared to cold cereals. You must look at food labels in this discriminating way. People who just look at calories per serving could come to the conclusion that Lucky Charms at 110 calories per serving is a better choice than oatmeal at 150 calories per serving. I hope you can see that such a conclusion is terribly wrong. In addition to calorie density, sodium density should also be considered. Jeff Novick recommends following a simple rule. When reading labels, look for a sodium-calorie ratio of 1:1 or less. For example, if a serving provides 100 calories, then it should not provide any more than 100 milligrams of sodium per serving. The exception to this recommendation is when considering condiments. Condiments can have a sodium-calorie ratio of up to 5:1 because you shouldn't be consuming too much at a sitting, and it's hard to find condiments that meet the 1:1 guidelines. There can be huge differences in sodium density among similar products. Near East Original Couscous provides 220 calories per serving and only 5 milligrams of sodium per serving for an excellent sodium to calorie ratio of 0.02 to 1. but Near East couscous tomato lentil flavor provides 220 calories and 670 milligrams of sodium for a lousy sodium to calorie ratio of 3 to 1. So please read labels carefully. I mentioned earlier that I'd share the simple mathematical formula to determine calorie density based on calories per pound. This comes in handy when comparing items whose serving sizes differ by weight. All you do is take 448 and divide it by grams per serving times the calories per serving. For example, if the serving size is 35 grams and the calories per serving is 115 calories, we divide 448 by 35 and multiply by 115 and we get 1,472 calories per pound. We use 448 because there are approximately 448 grams in a pound. So let's assess the calorie density, percentage of calories from fat, and the sodium density of this product. I'll let you decide the relative merits of this product when we're through. The serving size is 31 grams. The calories per serving, 130. Calories from fat is 41. And each serving provides 370 milligrams of sodium. After dividing 448 by 31 grams and multiplying by 130, we get a calorie density of about 1,879 calories per pound. A calorie density higher than that of pure sugar. By dividing 370 milligrams of sodium by 130 calories, we get a sodium density of 2.85 to 1, well above our 1 to 1 or less guideline. And by dividing 41 calories from fat into total calories per serving, this product provides 32% of its calories as fat. And again, this is above our 20% guideline. If you're like me, you'll decide that this product should never be confused as a health food. It's a high-fat, high-sodium food. What is this product? It's the all-natural Hanes baked crackers baked with organic whole wheat flour with no trans fat and no artificial flavors. Remember, don't ever believe the front of the label, ever. This cracker is high in calorie density, high in fat, and high in sodium. If this example doesn't convince you to be wary of the front of the food labels, I think the next example will. On the front of this cooking spray can, it clearly says, for fat-free cooking. There is a loophole in the labeling law that allows manufacturers to get away with outright lies. If a serving size is less than a half a gram, calories and nutrients can be rounded down to 0. So food manufacturers can use an unrealistic serving size to hide the true calorie and fat content of the product. The serving size of this cooking spray is 1/4 of a second spray, which is considered a 1/4 of a gram by weight. Most people don't bother looking at the serving size and are under the misapprehension that this product is fat and calorie free. This is a flat-out lie. A quick look at the ingredients bears this out. This product is a blend of oils with some soy lecithin and preservatives. Essentially, 100% of the calories in this product come from fat. Remember, oils are the most calorically dense food you can eat at 4,000 calories per pound. Yet according to the nutrition facts label, it contains no calories, and according to the front and back of the can, it contains no fat. So you can see how someone can be deceived into thinking that they could spray a half a can of the stuff and be adding no fat when they are adding an enormous amount of fat calories. In this case, it's imperative that you read the ingredients list to get a true picture of what you're getting from this product. This loophole in the labeling law exists as of the year 2015. Hopefully it will be closed in the not too distant future, but until then, buyer beware. In summary, here are some basic guidelines when reading food labels. Calories from fat should be less than or equal to 20% of total calories. Sodium to calorie ratio should be 1 to 1 or less with the exception of condiments. And always check the ingredients. For more guidance on label reading, go to the plantasticlife.com website. Click on the label reading icon on the home page. This concludes our 3-part video series. I hope you are considering making the significant changes necessary to recapture your health. Remember, big changes mean big results. Take advantage of the resources on the plantasticlife.com website. that includes the resource page that links to other helpful sites. And please feel free to email us at plantasticlife@gmail.com with any questions. We'll do our best to get back to you in a timely fashion. I'd like to end with one of my favorite quotes from Adam Smith. What can be added to the happiness of man who is in health, out of debt, and has a clear conscience? If you are struggling with the health part of this equation, a whole food plant-based diet could very well be your key to a long-lasting, full-functioning life of optimal health and happiness, what we like to call a plantastic life. I wish you success in your quest for great health.